Isn't that relaxing? It's the newest high-tech feature.
You're trying to sell me a TV with the spirit of a dead little girl trapped inside it.
Yes! That's the feature!
Do you not recognize her?
Hello everyone, welcome to 2FAST2MOVIE. I'm your host Jose Quintana, and with me is my co-host Alexandra, filling in for Kenny.
Yep, he got his wisdom teeth taken out, so he's very puffy.
Yep, so we should see him back next episode, hopefully.
Yeah, but he sent some of his thoughts, so we'll be sure to include those as well.
Alright, so let's talk about episode 4, We Interrupt This Program.
Yeah, it's pretty much like this is the episode we've all been waiting for. Like, the jig is finally up, we get a little more insight into exactly what's happening, and it's fucking weird, dude.
Yep, it is definitely something to keep an eye out on, because this episode is the one you really want to watch.
Say the synopsis that Disney Plus gives, but it says Monica Rambeau, tasked with a special assignment regarding sentient weapons, goes missing. Which, just the beginning of this, we're kind of getting this really incredible insight into people kind of like coming back, and the sort of chaos that caused on Earth. And just it's funny because I feel like thus far you've had this very like stylized sitcom visuals, and so in this episode we get these like what you're used to seeing for Marvel movies, really. I mean, it's like intensely high quality, and I love too that they switch aspect ratios every time they go back to the episodes.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
What really set it in for me for this episode.
Yeah, it's just like it's so stylized and it's so interesting, and they even like touch on that in this episode, like the kind of like mistakes or things that are coming through are even stylized. Like, now we see who the B guy really was. Somebody in sort of like that hazmat suit, but because they're coming into Wanda's like universe or energy field or whatever it is, it's getting like stylized into something that makes a little more sense.
Yep. All right, so before we continue on, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. We upload new videos every week. We're also doing Attack on Titans on 2FAST2MOVIE, so continue on with WandaVision. As always, spoilers ahead. So, for the plot summary, we start off with Monica Rambeau waking up in a hospital pretty much right as everyone who's been snapped away by Thanos comes back in the midst of chaos. And she's looking for her mom, who the nurse eventually tells her that she passed away 3 years ago, I believe it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years ago. And so we continue on where she's a S.w.o.r.D agent now, meeting with, I just had his name on it, but I forgot, the new director for S.w.o.r.D.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, like weird vibes, man. There's something about him. He's just like a little too smiley. And even the way that he's like, saying, oh, like, you should have been involved in who got promoted, but you weren't here, and how I was the only option and stuff. Like, it's, I don't know.
Yep, definitely suspicious vibes from him.
For sure.
But as we continue on, she meets up with Jimmy Woo to investigate Westview, where apparently any other, I guess, town in New Jersey doesn't even know of Westview.
Yeah, there's only Eastview.
Yeah, as far as we know.
Sounds like a West Side Story plotline or something.
Definitely something weird like that. But so Monica investigates a energy field of some sort, and gets pulled in. So we cut away to a little bit later, or a day later, actually. And we meet up with Darcy Lewis, who is now investigating these frequencies, which she calls CMBR, and discovers that they're broadcasting a sitcom starring Wanda and Vision. We continue on to figure out how the helicopter makes its way into Wanda's field, which we see turns in from a regular S.w.o.r.d. drone to a toy helicopter, and that it stayed colorized somehow. We still don't know about that. This episode likes to leave us with a lot of questions. And as we also figure out about, it was Jimmy Woo contacting Wanda through the radio. And for some reason, we do know that someone is censoring the broadcast, but we still don't know who. As we see when Darcy and Jimmy are watching, as right before Monica gets yoinked out of the energy field. Well, not yoinked, forced, but yeah. And that just... Monica ends up in the end saying it's all Wanda. So Alex, what is your takeaway from that?
I don't know. It just seems like... there has to be other people or things at play. Like, obviously, Wanda's she's probably the most powerful Avenger, I would say. And it's also like, when you have that idea of somebody's power comes from their mind, like what are the capabilities and limits of the human mind? But she seems confused, like, and obviously I think she's like traumatized and in shock, but she seems like she doesn't always know what's going on, and she seems like she's picking up little parts of what's going on. So I feel like there has to be someone else at play. I know you guys touched on this a little bit in another episode, but a huge fan theory is that Agnes is actually, I think it's Agatha Harkness, who is in the comics as a pretty powerful witch who has close ties to Wanda and kind of mentors her. And Kenny pointed out that she's like the only person that they don't identify when they're watching the episodes.
Right. So as Wanda and Vision are the first people, of course, to be recognized, Jimmy Woo tasked everybody outside Westview to discover who is who. And from what we can tell, they are basically residents of Westview or of some place in New Jersey that Wanda has either created or mentally reconfigured or changed their mind of how they're living in Wanda's new reality of some sort.
Yeah, and I feel like in the last episode we kind of started to get that breakdown, like we see with Herb, where he's like sawing through the bricks, because I feel like up until that point everybody's playing their part very well. So now it is kind of like how much do these townspeople know? Like, how did they get here exactly? How aware are they of their situation? Like, are they all playing this because they're scared of Wanda? Or again, is there something else at play that's making them act this way?
Right. So to real quick talk about a subject, I originally thought this was someone I originally thought this was someone messing with Wanda, and how this episode kind of points to view it seems to be Wanda's doing, but at the same time it still feels like there's some kind of foul play involved, because we do know that at least Monica and Agnes are kind of aware of what's happening, because if you notice early on, Monica gives off a hesitant vibe when saying her name to Wanda in the in early episode 2, I believe, as Geraldine, and she's aware of Ultron killing Pietro. when she brings that up.
Yeah, so they kind of point that out in this episode. They're saying, like, she doesn't look hurt. So when she came in, it seems like when people step into this area, their physical appearance changes to match Wanda's essentially vision for that episode that they're playing out. But so I guess that'll be the big thing for episode 5 is, like, what did she experience? Was her memory wiped at all? Or did she catch on to what was happening pretty quickly and was just trying to, like, infiltrate and get close to Wanda and see what she could find out?
Right. So let's talk a little bit about some theories for the episode, because the internet has gone all over the board with almost everything, essentially. We got to figure out if Vision is alive or not. If you notice, Jimmy Woo writes on the board if Vision is alive, and we still don't have a clue.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were shocked by that kind of, it was a jump scare, I feel like, when you see that almost, like, dead Vision. So I think some people are concerned, like, is she animating a dead corpse? Or is she just, like, having a quick flashback? But I don't know, because it seems like Vision is, like, sentient, and he's also confused. And I guess this goes a little more into theory, like, if you think about Age of Ultron and how Vision was created, like, Ultron lived on in all the other, like, robots, and Vision killed the last robot, so that was the end of Ultron. So is there a possibility or a way for Vision to come back in a different body? Or is that possible but only in what Wanda has created? Or is it literally just all in her head?
Yeah, that definitely leaves a lot of room to think about. I definitely want to say it's something in her head that's creating Vision alive, essentially. And the weird thing about that is how she's, like, able to not necessarily just communicate, but interact and have this life with Vision as she dreams of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So as far as, like, placement in the timeline of the MCU, we know this occurs in the middle of during Endgame and after Endgame, but definitely before Spider-Man Far From Home, as they refer to it as the blip, like they do in Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the whole show of WandaVision does take place in between that time.
So I saw online somebody was saying it's about 3 weeks after that. So Wanda has somehow made this area either in, well, I guess that's a question too. What was she doing in those 3 weeks? Did she make this town, or is it an even more recent revelation? Like, did something else happen and then the town was just made? Right.
It almost doesn't have any kind of hints, because we still don't have much to go on about that. We have rumors of Agatha. We have hints of Mephisto, who is essentially the devil of the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we know that Billy and Tommy, in the comics at least, were created with the powers of Mephisto. And Agatha actually tells this to Wanda in the comics, I believe. But this hasn't happened in WandaVision yet, or we don't know if it actually will.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because the first time that people seem to be catching on that this area even exists is, it seems almost like Jimmy, like, happens upon this area because they're looking for somebody who is in witness protection, and it seems like people in the area, like, even if you're outside of her, like, town, it's giving off some sort of vibe telling them that it doesn't exist and they shouldn't go in there. And Monica even talks about, like, well, how do you and I know it, but they can feel that something's off. So that, like,
Right.
in what exactly is happening there?
If only we can know. If only they had these episodes just out and ready for us. But
I know. I mean, that's when I was watching this. I was like, wow. I really want to binge the rest of this so
Definitely.
badly. Now I have to wait another week.
so this has a bit of a story that's similar to Once Upon a Time and Pleasantville, where in Pleasantville, the main characters, I already forgot their names, forgive me about that, but they are sent to a black and white version of Pleasantville. And in Once Upon a Time, the evil queen has everyone's memories warped into believing they're fairy tale characters, something like that. Yeah, Alex, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so Kenny was the first person who was like, this reminds me of Once Upon a Time, which obviously, like, now Disney owns Marvel. And I think even while Once Upon a Time was happening, they already had Marvel. So that's an interesting take, especially that, like, they're two properties owned by the same company, and they would have, like, such a similar storyline. That's interesting. And then Pleasantville, yeah, just it reminds me of Pleasantville, and mostly in the stylized version, but in that the main characters know that they're there and are, like, actively trying to get out.
Right. So one other theory we could talk about is if A.I.M, advanced God, I already forgot the name, advanced interactive mechanics or something like that, is involved with affecting Wanda's town, because they have their logo, I believe, is actually a hexagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in this episode we get, you know, S.w.o.r.d and the scientists are literally an audience. They're straight up watching these episodes on TVs, and so we kind of get to see them going through the same fan theories that we've been going through as we watch the first 3 episodes. So Jimmy even writes on his whiteboard, like, what's up with all the hexagons? Because there's also, like, when they show a map of what the town is, it's a hexagon. So it's like, you know, what does it all mean? Does this, you know, a hexagon is 6 sides and 6 points? Does that have to do with the devil? Does it have to do with the gauntlet?
Right. And one other thing to talk about is the fact that the acting director of S.w.o.r.D, Tyler Hayward, now that I got his name, is actually an MCU original character. So we don't have any comic book reference to go about that. So could he be a member of A.I.M? Could he be the one that's helping A.I.M mess with Wanda if they're behind it? Your guess is up with mine.
Left to be seen. Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because A.I.M, they're in Iron Man 3, but haven't really played a huge part in other movies. But it does seem like, from the information we have about them, like this could possibly be something that they're involved with. You know, they're kind of all about science and kind of, you know, getting the biggest minds together and trying to harness that into creating bigger and better things. So is this like an experiment that they're doing on Wanda, or are they trying to exploit her powers?
Right. And another thing to touch about is the commercials that we see in episodes 2 and 3 that specifically talk about Hydra, because A.I.M makes weapons for Hydra during World War II. So what could be the significance behind Hydra and commercials? We do know that Baron Wolfgang von Strucker is a Hydra sleeper agent within S.h.i.E.L.D. who helped start at A.I.M, and his name is the name for the watch.
Yeah.
And we actually do see the same commercial in this episode.
Yeah, it's funny that they never talk on, like, they never touch on in this episode, like, why are there commercials? And the commercials, it seems to be, like, people who aren't living in the town. So, is this, like, something that Wanda's creating these commercials? Or are they, like, some sort of subliminal messaging that is being fed to her?
Right. So,
And is that
as
the
far-
person who's,
yeah.
like, censoring the episodes, too?
Right. It keeps leaving up theories up to the air. It's almost like as if S.W.o.R.D is actually like us. We're guessing their theories. Kind of what you just
Yeah.
said, Alex.
It's
Yeah.
like it answered questions, and it left so many more questions in its wake.
Yep. And I believe we have, 5 more episodes? I think it's 9 episodes total for this season.
Yeah.
Series. I don't know if we'll have a season 2 or not, but
It's crazy, too, because, I feel like in the other episodes, the pace is slower, and it's more what you're used to for, like, those decade-appropriate sitcoms. But this episode was just, like, so jam-packed. It was, like, I think Kenny said, an information dump. So I was like, oh my god, it's over already. Like, I need to know so much more. But I like that they're sticking with that almost like sitcom, that like sitcom time period. And it's also kind of funny because it's like, the movies are so long. So I wouldn't expect them to put out a show that's only like 25 to 30 minutes.
yeah, I think that's to keep not only in line with a standard show, but because compared to other Marvel episodes, they've always been roughly an hour, 45-ish minutes, like Agents of S.W.o.r.D, even though that's not part of the MCU, but also the Netflix shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones. They all feel like Marvel movies, essentially.
Yeah. It's funny too because, they're on Disney Plus, and I've noticed this with Netflix shows as well, where they're getting away from like the 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Episodes can vary a little bit in length because you're not, squished into a certain network time period, which is nice because then if they need an extra 2 or 3 minutes, they can do that. Or if they don't need it, they don't need to fill in like some weird extra space.
Right. But okay, let's go into our verdict for the episode. Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think this episode was a wild ride. It is really, you're finally getting to see what's happening, behind the scenes almost. And it's just making me so excited for next week for the episode to come out. Because there's so many questions about what exactly is happening, and I just want to know more about kind of the key players, because it's clear that we and S.W.o.r.D is kind of in the dark about a lot of things at this point. So I'm excited to see who else is involved.
Yeah. This episode is a high yay for me. If you're very used to the MCU, watch it the whole way through, and you managed to stick with WandaVision this long, this episode should be the one that definitely hooks you on. And you should just be on the lookout for what's next to come, because we have theories up in the air for about everything regarding it.
Yeah. And we were kind of talking about this before, but I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of the people in this cast have been involved with some pretty prominent sitcoms before. Like, obviously, Darcy, Kat Jennings, was in Two Broke Girls, and Jimmy was in probably one of the last, like, very good network sitcoms, Fresh Off the Boat. The Hearts in... that's the first episode, I believe. The Mr. Hart was in Superstore, and then obviously the amazing mom, Kitty, from That 70s Show. So I don't think that casting is like coincidental. just like another amazing detail that they were kind of able to layer in to this show that clearly just it's such a well thought out show. Like, it seems like something that they've been working on forever. So that also makes me excited to see what else the other episodes reveal.
Right, especially because we still have the upcoming decades to go into, as this one was more present, and we still have 80s, possibly 90s, and 2000s, even if it continues to go up from there. And hopefully we get to see more of the regular sitcom archetype.
Yeah. And definitely, you know, we get a sense that Vision is starting to get the sense that something's off. And I feel like it's only going to go up from here because, you know, he was just told that, you know, Monica's character doesn't have a house. And then Wanda's like, oh, she had to go home. So he's like, oh, it's fishy.
Yep, Vision, especially regarding that a little bit right after the jump scare. We know that Vision talks about we don't have to stay here, but Wanda says that this is our home, and to me that kind of sets in stone a little bit about why I think Wanda's the one doing this to herself. But like I said, and we discussed that this still could be anybody doing whatever to Wanda. Yeah. But I believe that wraps up what we have to talk about for today. Thank you as always for tuning in. Our friends, such as Alex, is covering Avengers on the Return of the Movie, as well as the other Avengers movies. So be sure to check that out. I'm Jose. That's Alex. And thank you as always thank you for listening. And as always, it's 2FAST2MOVIE.
Bye.